Hey guys, Legendaray here, and welcome back to another Clash Royale video. Now, this current meta in Clash Royale, well, to say the least, it is definitely quite different from any previous meta. To be a little bit more specific, two cards, the Mother Witch and the Elite Barbarians, have seen quite a large increase in popularity. Now, the Mother Witch, sure, she fits in a couple of archetypes pretty well, but the Elite Barbarians, man, these guys just fit into every single deck in Clash Royale. You see them in Mortar, you see them in Golem, you see them in Lava Hound, you see them in Fireball Bait, you name it, you can probably fit Elite Barbarians in your deck. So, as I always say, if you can't beat them, join them. So today we're going to be going over the top 5 decks to use in this current meta and for the upcoming Season 22 Global Tournament. As expected, there will be a lot of decks with Elite Barbarians in them, but hey, what do you expect? Elite Barbarians are literally broken in this current meta. Of course, each of these decks has been thoroughly researched and has shown to do very, very well in both top ladder as well as in grand challenges. And for each deck, we're going to be going over the synergies and strategies involved in playing these decks effectively. Of course, deck links for each deck are going to be down in the description for those of you interested. And hey, while you're down there, be sure to leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this one. Also, if you'd like to support me, feel free to use code RAY in the Clash Royale shop. The new season has just begun, so any support would be greatly appreciated. And with all that out of the way, let's get right into the decks. Number 1, Mega Knight Fireball Bait. Now, with the newly buffed Mother Witch being a very effective Fireball Bait option, she definitely fits well in any type of Fireball Bait deck. And in this new meta, this Mega Knight variation of a Fireball Bait deck has become one of the most dominant decks for you guys to play. This is more of an aggressive type deck, but you're still going to want to remain pretty controlled because with the cards being relatively expensive, you're going to have to watch your elixir costs and make sure that you do not overcommit on any offensive push. Starting off the match, I will be more okay with cycling some of my cheaper cards such as my Bar Barrel or splitting my Zappies, but aside from that, I'm really going to be playing reactively because the utility of so many of these cards such as the Mother Witch, the Flying Machine, and the Elite Barbarians on surviving a defense and moving on into an offensive counter push. So starting off with the defensive end of this deck, there are so many options for you to use. Mother Witch is very, very good against swarms because, you know, she can kill any of these swarms and turn them into little pigs. The Zappies are great for stalling any sort of big tank push that the opponent may have. The Elite Barbarians are so good at both being a mini tank as well as dealing high output damage, and the Flying Machine is absolutely amazing at sniping things away from very far away. Last but not least, the Mega Knight is also a great option on defense, especially against medium health units, but you do have to watch out for that elixir cost since it does cost 7 elixirs, so it is a pretty heavy commitment. That being said, however, a lot of the times after a defense, you will have successful counter pushing troops. Depending on what kind of deck your opponent is running, you can then decide how you want to approach your offensive pushes. If you're against a deck that has a ton of splashers, well then it might be a little bit more useful for you to start applying heavy double lane pressure with your counter push in one lane and then going in with the Royal Hogs in the other, and then going in with Royal Hogs in the other, or just splitting the Royal Hogs. Alternatively, if your opponents do not have that many splash answers, or if they don't have any splash answers in cycle, well then you can just go all in the same lane and just completely overwhelm your opponents on that front. Now, in addition to the Royal Hogs being a great offensive tool, the Elite Barbarians are also really great on offense. Oftentimes, simply playing them in the opposite lane at the bridge is going to be very, very difficult for your opponents to stop, especially if you already have a push coming in the opposite lane. The Elite Barbarians essentially serve as a secondary win condition, and they apply so much pressure that over time is just going to slowly but surely overwhelm your opponents. Number 2, Electro Giant Beatdown. Now, this deck has been in my top 5 decks for quite a couple months now, and it's not surprising. The control aspect of this deck just synergizes so well with the win condition of the Electro Giant. It's a control-based beatdown deck, meaning that sometimes you're going to be focusing on making positive elixir trades on defense, and other times you're going to be building up a big beatdown push to try and completely steamroll your opponents. Starting off the match, I'll generally cycle something very, very passive, such as a Bar Barrel, an Ice Wizard, Dragon or my Goblin Cage in the center. This will generally cause my opponents to play something, and after that, again, just play very reactively. The goal here is to make positive trades on defense, convert that to an elixir advantage, and turn that into an offensive push. On the defensive end, you have so many obvious tools to do so. The Goblin Cage is great at pulling any win conditions your opponents have, in addition to summoning a very high damage output Goblin Brawler. And then the Baby Dragon, Ice Wizard, and Dark Prince synergize very well with the Tornado, being able to damage down both low HP as well as high HP pushes that your opponents can have. Getting a King Tower activation is also quite essential, because having that activated King's Tower is going to allow you to spend much less elixir on your defenses, as those 3 towers can get so much more value over a long period of time. Now, the beatdown style of this deck also makes the offense of this deck very simple. So Electro Giant goes down in front, and then your support units follow up behind. One thing that you do have to watch out for, however, is giving your opponents too much spell value. So make sure that the opponents either do not have their big spell in cycle, or make sure that you space your units out properly so that the opponent cannot simply take out your entire push with a rocket or a lightning. On your end, your offensive spells are also insanely useful cards. The Tornado synergizes with almost all of your offensive units, being able to tornado ranged units, or any other units for the matter, into that Electro Giant's zap range, while also grouping those units up for your splash unit support troops. The lightning is also very useful if your opponent has high elixir single unit defensive options such as the Electro Dragon, the E-Wiz, or the Musketeer. All in all, the control aspect of this deck combined with the beatdown aspects makes it a very simple deck for you guys to pick up and play, so it's definitely one of the top options that I would personally recommend that you guys play. Number 3, Elite Barbarian Bridge Spam. Now this is a very new type of bridge spam with the Mother Witch and the Elite Barbarians. At first glance, there isn't technically a win condition in this deck, but I mean honestly, the Elite Barbarians really do serve as a win condition. Now this, as in the title, is a bridge spam deck, so it's all about applying high pressure and preventing your opponents from being able to build up their own big push. Starting out the match, I'm always going to be cycling some of my cards, cycle a Barb Barrel, a Heal Spirit, or a Bandit at the bridge, which will generally be all plays that force out the opponent's responses. After that, you're just going to be trying to build up these quick, fast pushes over and over again. For example, the Mother Witch is absolutely amazing at taking care of tanks and turning that immediately into a counter push that'll just completely overwhelm your opponent's tower. If the opponent makes a big commitment in the back, even spamming a cannon car at the bridge can be deadly. Even though they didn't nerf its speed, if it does manage to get a lock on, it's still going to force out quite a bit of response from your opponents. Now ideally in this deck, you are applying enough pressure so that the opponents cannot build up their own pushes, but in the case that they do, you have just so many options. The E-Wiz is there to slow down any sort of building targeting unit such as a Giant or a Golem. The Elite Barbarians and the Cannon Car are there for your high damage output. The Bandit Dash can be insanely useful to reset things such as the Sparky Charge, a Mega Knight Jump, or a Prince Charge, and then the Mother Witch is there at taking down swarms and spawning those hogs that'll actually help distract your opponent's units. Combining that with the Heal Spirit and the Fireball, this forms a very well-rounded defense that also has a very high counter push potential, with a lot of these units being medium to high HP. The Heal Spirit synergizes so well with the Elite Barbarians because since those barbs are a melee unit, if the Heal Spirit is able to jump onto a tank that the Elite Barbarians are attacking, the Elite Barbarians are going to pretty much get an additional 50% of their HP back, meaning that they're just going to be even more unstoppable on a defense. Number 4, Golem Beatdown with Elite Barbarians. So next up, we're going to be sharing a classic Golem Beatdown deck, a little bit similar to the Electro Giant deck I shared earlier, but this time we do have the Elite Barbarians in a Golem Beatdown deck. Now, this is going to be a bit more of a gung-ho, go-all-in type of beatdown deck. As you can see, a 4.5 average elixir cost, definitely quite expensive, but it also does have similar control elements in the Ice Wizard, the Baby Dragon, and the Tornado. Starting off, you're going to be playing pretty passively, cycling a bar barrel, going in with an ice wizard, and then just generally waiting for your opponents to make that first play. If they play something a little bit cheaper, then just go ahead and react with some of your other units. But if they play something expensive, then honestly you can already begin building up a golem push from the very back. This is because you do have relatively cheap answers in order to try and stop your opponent's rush into the opposite lane. Mainly the ice wizard, the bar barrel, and the tornado. 3 cards that you will have to use pretty effectively in order to play this Golem Beatdown deck. Now, the offense of this deck, pretty simple, you know, just going with a Night Witch in the back, support it with a baby dragon, and tornado any ranged units into that golem push so that your units can take them out pretty quickly. The lightning generally will not be used until double elixir time, where you will have the elixir to afford it, and the elite barbarians are there if you really have that big of an elixir advantage, but generally I find that I will solely be playing these elite barbarians for their defensive power. Speaking of defense, again, the elite barbarians are going to be your mini tank as well as your damage outputs. Night Witch also does a pretty good job at taking down units, but it's generally going to be a secondary option in my book. As for splash units and controlling the opponent's pushes, you have the ice wizard, the baby dragon, and the tornado. These 3 cards are great at slowing down the opponent's pushes and slowly but surely damaging them down, which can oftentimes allow you to defend really large pushes for an insanely cheap amount of elixir. Last but not least, the bar barrel is great as just a 2 elixir mini tank, because hey, sometimes you are going to be really short on elixir, and having that one cheap card that you can play in these types of situations is honestly going to save you quite a few of your games. All in all, it's a beatdown focused deck, so you're mainly going to be on the aggressive side, especially in that double elixir and overtime, so just make sure that you keep that in mind when you're playing this deck. Number 5. 3 Musketeers, Elite Barbarians. Now, this is a bit of an older deck that has become very popular recently due to the recent buff of the 3 Musketeers. With their deploy time now being 1 second, these Musketeers can now be played much more reactively, and the opponents will not be able to spell them out as easily with something such as a fireball. This deck is very different from a lot of the decks that I've shared recently because the 3 Musketeers is such a unique type of win condition. In single elixir, what you're doing is simply trying to apply quick pressure with your bandit, your royal ghost, and your bar barrel while trying to build up a bit of an elixir pump advantage. What's great about the elixir pump is that it synergizes well with the 3 Musketeers because the opponents are going to have to use their big spell on one of these cards. In addition, this deck does have a surprisingly quick cycle, so sometimes you can even outcycle your opponent's big spell and get 2 or even 3 pumps down on the arena before you even reach double elixir time. On the offensive end of this deck, it's all about applying that double lane pressure onto your opponents. The 3 Musketeers are pretty much always going to be split in the back. 2 Musketeers will go towards your healthier tower so that the opponents cannot get that spell value, and then just go ahead and support that 3 Musketeer push accordingly. The Bandit, the Ice Golem, the Royal Ghost, and the Heal Spirit are going to be your main support cards because they're relatively cheap and you'll likely have the elixir to actually play those cards. The Elite Barbarians are an option, but again, there's 6 elixirs, so usually they will be saved for double or even triple elixir time. The goal here is that you're constantly building up 3 Musketeer pushes from the back, slowly but surely forcing your opponents to overcommit on defense and eventually just overwhelming them with the sheer number of units you can place. In fact, sometimes once you get 2 or 3 pumps down and you're in double elixir or triple elixir time, you can even consider cycling 2 sets of 3 Musketeers in a single push, one in the back and then one at the bridge once your push eventually reaches that point. On the defensive end, again, Elite Barbs are going to be your main high damage output. The Ice Golem is great at distracting, Royal Ghost is there for tanks, and then the Bandit Dash is very useful against a lot of the charging type units that are in this current meta. All in all, it's a double lane pressure focused deck, so as long as you keep that in mind, you'll generally be able to keep your opponents constantly on their toes. So there we go, those are the top 5 decks that I would personally recommend you guys run in this Season 22 Global Tournament. Again, there were a lot of decks with the Elite Barbarians in them, but again, what can I do? They're doing very well in this current meta, so of course, I'm just gonna have to share the most powerful decks that you can possibly play. Again, deck links are going to be down in the description for those of you interested, but unfortunately guys, that's all I've got time for in today's episode. Huge thanks to all of my channel members. You guys are the absolute G's. If you enjoyed, please leave a like down below as well as a subscription to my channel. And as always, this is Legendaray, and I'm signing off. See you guys next time.